Hi, I'm Matt Willis, Public Health Officer, with today's COVID-19 update from Marin County. Yesterday, the Board of Supervisors approved an ordinance strengthening enforcement of our shelter-in-place orders. This is going to help us in several ways. We're seeing dramatic increases in cases over the past week, with record numbers across the state of California, regionally, in the Bay Area, and in Marin County. The virus is part of our environment, and we cannot reopen without seeing some degree of increased transmission. So some of this is inevitable and was expected. However, the current velocity of these increases is concerning and needs to be tackled now. During the first months of this pandemic, in Marin County, we averaged between 5 and 10 individuals with COVID-19 in our hospitals. Now, for the past 3 weeks, our averages are closer to 30. While this number remains steady, it puts us that much closer to the tipping point of surge. Up to this point, we've relied on essentially voluntary compliance with the shelter-in-place orders. It's been encouraging to see how well most of our community has responded, and that's how we flatten the curve. However, we're also seeing signs that not everyone is taking this as seriously, and that needs to change. Now is not the time to relax our behaviors. One of the benefits of the time we gain by flattening the curve is we have a much better sense of how the virus is transmitted. The science tells us that simply covering your face with a cloth prevents 95% of the particles from reaching anyone else. That is life-saving information. The science tells us the virus generally travels about 3 feet and that 6 feet is much safer distance. Most of the policies that will be enforced under the law track back to these two very basic behaviors: social distancing and face covering. Another benefit of the ordinance adopted is that there will be a single countywide approach to enforcement. We've been speaking regularly with city and town leadership, and all agree that it's confusing and even harmful to have a variety of different approaches across the county. The Enforcement Task Force has been established representing leadership across the county to ensure the same standard is upheld, whether you're a business in Larkspur or a business in Novato. We're all vulnerable. The virus doesn't care which town you live in. We're all in this together across Marin. The agreement, the social contract around our community response, is that reopening requires an understanding of our individual responsibility to prevent spread. We know that as important as the ordinance is, we're not going to be able to enforce our way out of this pandemic. Ultimately, it's still up to each of us. We've set up an email address to report violations. Please report any serious violations, especially if you see a business that's not following the standards to protect staff and customers, to sipviolation@marincounty.org. sipviolation@marincounty.org. Businesses will be given 3 days to improve their practices, after which time a fine or potentially closure could be levied. At the same time, most of us know we are doing our best to protect our families and community. So remember that straightforward, polite, and direct communication to remind someone who may not be following the standards is still vital. Citations, like traffic tickets, can be offered under the new ordinance to individuals walking down the street without their mask, for example. So thank you all for doing your part.